Hi, welcome to another episode of Wikipedia Weekly. I'm your host, Andrew Lee, also known as user Fuzzheado. So welcome to episode 135. We're recording in May 2020, and we are having what we're calling the Walrus Overtime, where we're going to be talking to folks who have just completed the Wikipedians of the United States monthly call. So you're probably watching us on one of several networks. We are out there on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, on Periscope or Twitter, and on Twitch. So we're streaming to 4 separate networks. You can chat back to us and we can bring up your comments on the screen. And we encourage you to do that. So if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. We're going to be talking a lot about events in the Wikipedia and Wikimedia communities. And we're going to be talking about how we are dealing with virtual events in lieu of face-to-face events, because this is kind of high season for a lot of things that we do. So without further ado, let's bring in our cohort. First, I want to bring in Richard Nipel. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Richard Nipel, user Faris, iHeartQ60, New York City.
Great. I'm going to also bring in Rosie. Hi, Rosie.
Hi, everybody. Rosie Stevenson Goodnight. I edit as user Rosie Step, and I'm coming to you live from Nevada City, California.
Great. And we got Rob.
Hello, I'm Rob Fernandez. I'm coming to you live from Q61, and I'm on the board of Wikimedia District of Columbia.
That's great. And we also have Benjamin. Hi, Benjamin.
I'm Benjamin, user Emu Farmers from the great state of Massachusetts.
Ah, nice. And we also have Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter Meyer from Washington, D.C. I'm user Econ Terms, and I'm also on the board of Wikimedia DC.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us on this overtime episode where we're going to be talking about events. And I thought one of the more interesting things we could probably talk about is an event that Peter's involved with called Enterprise Media Wiki Conference, right? Or EW, well, Media, EWM, whatever the
There's only so many combinations of those 3 letters.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, this is a conference they're about enterprise users of the Mediawiki software, the same software that runs Wikipedia, but you're not talking about Wikipedia per se. These are folks who use the software for other kind of wiki applications. So tell us a little bit about this conference that you've been involved with for many years, and there's all kinds of interesting users of Mediawiki, right?
Yes, Enterprise Mediawiki means a Mediawiki that's set up for the good of an organization or network of people, but not by the foundation. Mm-hmm. So there were people from various companies, software developers making special extensions for this purpose. And I'm a government person, and there are a number of us representing some kind of government agency where we have some common issues. And in running Mediawiki so that everybody in a large organization can get to it makes the organization smarter. If they can build up a reference work with their own terminology and procedures. So we had a panel of government people, and most of the people were actually software developers, consultants, or came from companies.
Nice. And you typically have this in different cities. You'd had it in DC. This was supposed to be in Ohio, but you went virtual like most every other conference. So tell us a little bit how it went. It looked like it was really interesting. You used Zoom or some other tool here?
Yes, it was Zoom. We also had, for some separate conversations, Riot. And then it was also shown on YouTube. That the level of complexity was beyond me. I am not one of the organizers. You'll see them up top. Cindy Sekaliz and Yaron Koren were 2 of the big organizers. And then there were the people who set it up to be in Ohio, who lost their work. But we may try again, I think, in the same place, Sandusky, Ohio. But it was virtual, and it was not clear that it would work, but it worked quite well.
Right. And I think Riot is a kind of a open source Slack alternative. Is that right?
I think, it's a Slack alternative. It's also like sort of intermediate with IRC. So some groups are replacing IRC with Slack. I think perhaps Mozilla has done that recently. It's been one of the things that has been discussed as and at least I've advocated for something like this, perhaps being another of the tools that the Wikimedia Foundation might help provide through its cloud server, as they've recently provided through Jitsi. It'd be kind of nice. A lot of us are using Slack for Wiki volunteer projects, and it might be nice if there's a little bit more centralized and an open system that everyone can use.
Right, and so, Peter, a lot of the users of this are government agencies, right? We actually had Wikimania in DC, and State Department was one of those folks who were at that conference. So State Department and even Defense Department are folks who use this kind of software, right?
There are some in the Defense Department, and there's all the Department of Energy has access to at least one MediaWiki.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a large scale setup. The State Department one, Diplopedia, is available to people across foreign affairs functions in many agencies. And that's a difficult thing to make happen administratively.
Mm-hmm.
And the intelligence community has one for 16 agencies. And these are just very interesting applications. Unfortunately, most people in government do not have access to one, and that means there's some information that is really stays stovepiped. I have the vision of one big wiki for all the people in the U.S. federal government. Canada is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
This is a conference, I guess, while I'm holding the stage here. This is a conference where we would like more people to come, more people to tune in from more organizations, people developing special purpose extensions for some particular kind of organization. They've been developing extensions to make it easier to use as a document management system where you upload a file and then wiki pages describe or make discoverable the file.
Right.
That kind of thing. So we had very wise people there. And if people are interested in that, look up EMWCon. It's been running for several years.
And of course, the MediaWiki software is a product of the Wikimedia Foundation. It is as much a project of the Wikimedia Foundation as Wikipedia and Wikidata, although it's a little bit different, and it's used by many outside people in interesting ways. And there's been some discussion about how does it compare to the commercial wiki software that's out there. How should it be? How should the foundation structured? How much support should be offered? Should there be foundation staff resources going into supporting software that's being used, say, across government or businesses? And I think that's something that there's been some frustration. I've been to previous EMWCon, and there's some frustration around that. Like, why aren't they devoting more resources to this? This is the most important wiki software in the world, and they don't even realize that they're just using it to make some silly encyclopedia.
Well, I think there's.
You understand.
For a long time, I was somewhat active in MediaWiki development for a number of years, not in the last maybe 5 years, but there were always rumblings about sort of setting up a MediaWiki Foundation, just to make things as confusing as possible in our branding.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that ever really went anywhere, in part because so much of the development of MediaWiki is driven by the Wikimedia Foundation, by its teams. It sort of has its own ecosystem in terms of how they, everybody else kind of climbs on top of that and adds their own thing. But the core is pretty heavily driven, my understanding, by the platform team or whatever the team is called at the WMF now.
Yes, precisely. There is a coalition called the Media Stakeholders Group. They also have their own site and they're an affiliate that wants to encourage development of MediaWiki for non-foundation wiki sites and make the software more and more easily packaged and a standalone product of our movement. And there is a lot to be said for that. One reason is that once you get people editing a MediaWiki and used to it, the content they develop, their site naturally becomes a feeder site to Wikipedia because they've got things organized in the right
we can
way.
trick them. That's a great idea.
Well, inculcate them. Apple used to give away their computers to schools because they knew that over time those school people would be big decision makers. Now people
first start with the Oregon Trail on the Apple IIe, and then look where they are.
Yeah.
I want to also remind folks who are watching out there, you can please feel free to put in your comments on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, and we can bring them up on screen if we want to talk about them. So, so this is great. Thanks for introducing it. I mean, we've known about this conference for a while. We really never talked about it within our community that much. So it's really great to see this. And I think I went to one in person once, and it was really amazing to see how deep these folks go into developing for Mediawiki. And you'll see that there's a lot of Wikidata and Wiki-based content on this year's conference. Was that true? Did you notice that?
It benefits organizations if they can link into Wikidata. So yes, a few of them are putting information up into it. And I think a larger category of use is to use the information from Wikidata, which is available reliably all the time to any of these organizations, because their Mediawiki can reach out into it. Yes, some of this is high-intensity software development on how to run a wiki farm in which there are many Mediawikis that share some software but have their own configurations.
Right. Great. So NASA is also part of this as well. Is that right?
There are several interesting presentations from NASA people every time. Yes, they have devoted Mediawikis. One of the Mediawikis at NASA is devoted to collecting expertise on extravehicular activity, EVA.
Wow.
And that means spacewalks.
Mm.
The canonical wiki on spacewalks is a Mediawiki. But it's very highly secured and we cannot see it.
Oh, you got me excited there.
I mean, like I'm getting advice for all my spacewalking activities. I mean, nowadays, if you want to go outside, it feels like an EVA.
Yes, that's right. Perfect for now. And in fact, I think it was in November that a NASA person edited Wikipedia from space. There's a tweet about that.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. So one last question perhaps about this, and we can move on. So in the enterprise arena, if they're not using Mediawiki, what's like the competitor, whether it's open source or in the commercial space? Like what are they competing against or comparing against, do you think?
I don't have numbers, but it's common that organizations use SharePoint, which has a wiki, or Confluence, which has a wiki. But in both cases, they're mainly oriented to something else, document management or a forum or task manager.
Right.
The real knowledge pooling wiki is Mediawiki.
Right. And if you're using like within SharePoint, whatever, you probably don't have as much flexibility with categories or extending the system and things like that you have with Mediawiki.
They don't have categories, and it's oriented toward each group having its own wiki, some of which are private or walled off from the others. So it doesn't get quite the scale. Doesn't have footnotes. It's for a different purpose.
Right.
Yeah, to me, big wikis are more interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, something that's like, movement wide or something that's has like some ambition. It's not like this. If it's a wiki for 5 people, that's not like really exciting, is it? It's hardly. It could just be a chalkboard at that point.
It might get you where you're going, but the really interesting ones are Mediawikis that are designed for kind of universality of access, links all over the site, and the capacity to link by interwiki to Wikipedia very simply and easily, or to Wikidata and so forth. Yes, there's a universality to Mediawiki that is very appealing and useful.
Yeah, one use case we saw, which is not related to space or government, was the San Francisco MoMA used a Mediawiki installation to catalog how they installed all their art pieces, which is really interesting. So all the pictures of, forklifts and ladders and everything, like before, after pictures of all their galleries, they all catalog using Mediawiki, a private instance. We can't see it ever, Actually, we did get to get a glimpse of it real quick. But that's pretty cool that you're seeing them using as really graphical notebooks that they can craft and can turn into whatever they want and not have to obey by Microsoft's way of doing things or any other enterprise software vendor, right? Yep. So cool. Thank you so much for that. And we can maybe talk a little bit more about how these conferences are being done later in the program. But I thought what we could do is hit up Rosie and Rob to talk about some of the stuff that they are doing, because There's a lot of interesting things going on with COVID-19 that Rosie's been working on. So tell us a little bit, Rosie, what your activities have been. If you want to share your screen, you can drive, so I don't have to find all the links that you are going to. So,
Oh, gosh. Let's see if I can do that.
yeah, hit the share screen button and then a Chrome tab, and then we can go from there. And while you're doing that, anyone who's watching us, hit the share button on your networks, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or Twitter. Share this back out to folks who are interested in Enterprise Media Wiki or Wiki conferences or virtual events. We've had a lot of experience in the last 2-3 weeks with virtual events in our community, and we're going to talk about that later on in terms of what we've learned and what we can do in kind of the next generation of online events.
How can I make the chat that we have going disappear?
Oh, the chat disappear?
The private chat that we have going in the StreamYard.
You don't have to go disappear it. You can just don't have it there.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
You can leave it there.
Okay, great. So
All you have to do is just hit the share screen button at the bottom and then share a Chrome tab. And we'll just put it up there.
I have clicked share and it's not. No.
the great thing about a live show is that we can't edit stuff like this out.
Well, if you need
But I
to,
don't
I
think
can
anyone's
show it.
watching
but I
this
think
anyway live.
it's
so.
more fun if you navigate it, but I can if you want.
Yeah, I'm clicking share and I can't, and it's doing nothing. The only other option is to click cancel.
Oh, okay. Well,
There it is.
no, that's me.
That's
Oh.
you.
I can bring it up, no problem. So this is the thing that you've been working on. I think you originated this, right? Impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the fashion industry.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one thing I just started this week. It seemed to me like there was room for this, that we had quite a few articles about impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on, and one of them was not the fashion industry. And we know that it has impacted manufacturing and sales and events. But what really has interested me is the impact of the face mask on the fashion industry, because you walk into the grocery store and you see all these different face masks now. I mean, at the start of the COVID-19 epidemic, we saw people wearing, a few people wore masks that they got from a doctor's office. And then some people had the N95s. And you still see those, but mostly you see the masks that people are now making at home, or they're buying on social media sites and so forth. And so it was interesting that you can see you can see a photo of a magazine article from Time's Life with the headline "Year of the Mask," and then as you kind of scroll down in this particular article, there's a little bit more on it. I don't want to belabor the point, and this article has a lot of room for growth. So I hope by talking about it now that it might interest some people to go ahead and expand the article. And as I think that there's plenty more that can be written about it. If you halt right there and click the link for impacts, which right now, oh yeah, you can see it, they're not hidden. You can see which impact articles already exist, from things like crime and economy and domestic violence and environment and so forth. And then by industry, of course, aviation and cannabis and cinema and so forth. But you can see that there wasn't one for fashion. So, you know, a shout out to our Wiki community to perhaps consider working on this article. So another thing I'm working on now is biographies. And the biographies issue is actually more important to me because I've kind of become an expert in them because of the work that I've been doing through the years at Women in Red, and even preceding that with Wiki Project Women Writers. At the very start of the Wiki Project COVID-19, when it was founded, a group of editors talked about which biography articles should get a talk page template of Wiki Project COVID-19 and which wouldn't. And it wasn't really, there weren't a lot of people participating in the conversation. Not everyone even knew there was such a Wiki project, let alone that this conversation was going on about biographies. And few people decided that the only biographies that should get this Wiki project COVID-19 talk page banner are those biographies where the person not just they died from it, but there was something more to it than just death. Or if there was a death, it was an important death. It was the first in Italy or something like that. And I started reviewing the articles about deaths by COVID-19, and I realized that there's just a huge mishmash, and actually developed a spreadsheet where I'm kind of looking at. So here are the things, just general things I've noticed so far. I'm about 1/3 of the way through in my review. And what I have seen is this. First of all, there's abysmally few number of biographies about women versus men of anyone who's died from COVID-19. And of course, then one has to wonder, well, why is that? Is it that fewer women die of COVID-19? Is it that fewer notable women die of COVID-19? Is it that the media doesn't cover women who die of COVID-19 in the same way that they cover the men who die of COVID-19? Is it, what is it? Is it something else? And while it's fine for me to do this in spreadsheet fashion for my own study, I think that the way that we really are going to be able to analyze this is we need all biographies affected by COVID-19 to have a template on their talk page saying that this belongs to Wikipedia COVID-19. The thing is, I haven't gotten really anyone on Wiki to respond. I think they just don't know which way they should respond. I asked on Twitter, and I heard from Netta Hussain, who was an MD, and she's defending her PhD dissertation later this month, who said on Twitter, yes, it should be on all biography articles. And Jess Wade, a PhD scientist in London, said, yes, it should be on all death articles. So I'm not sure whether I can convince people during this podcast, this Wikipedia Weekly podcast, to voice their opinions on this issue or not, or maybe I'll just be bold and I'll start doing it myself. But it's one of those things as Wikipedians, we just go down this rabbit hole. And for me, the rabbit hole is to review every article related to COVID-19 death and then get it into my spreadsheet and analyze the data. So that's another thing I'm doing. And then I guess I'll swing back and talk about conferences. I'll be speaking at a conference this weekend. It's hosted by the Free Software Association of Turkey. There's a link to it. I'll be talking about Wikipedia's gender gap. That's the content gender gap, the editor gender gap, the reader gender gap, and so forth. So looking forward to doing that as an online event, even though it's going to be facilitated by a group in Turkey. There'll be people from as far away as Sweden and me in California and everyone and a lot of other people in between. The link I just shared in our chat, actually, if you're able to put that up on the screen and scroll down, you'll be able to see who else is speaking at that conference.
Nice. Tell me again about that conference. That is...
It's called azurcon.org, and it's run by the Free Software Association of Turkey. If you scroll down, it'll say a little bit more. I don't know if you're that. There you go. So it tells you that.
Oh, nice.
And there 500 people are signed up to attend, and there's images of the people who are speaking. It's really interesting. A guy named Chris Stevenson is also a speaker, and he spells Stevenson just like I spell Stevenson. No relationship.
And of course, the Turkish free culture community has something to celebrate recently, that they've recently had the unblock of Wikipedia sites.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that's awesome that you would mention that, Richard, because that is a fact. For at least a couple of years, Wikipedia was blocked in Turkey. And the issue was taken to its Supreme Court, who decided that that was unconstitutional. And so Wikipedia was unblocked. And now people can read and edit Wikipedia again. So I'll be talking about Wikipedia on Saturday, 8 a.m. California time. That's it for me, I think.
I
Great.
guess I'm curious about the COVID-19 project too. Is it mostly medical articles that get classified in the project? It's not mostly biographies, is it?
No, mostly the articles are geographic. So COVID-19 in California, in Maryland, in France, in Paris, in all the different countries, and then subdivisions, like I said, subdivisions by the states in the US, but other kinds of subdivisions in other geographic areas. So I think those make up the largest group. And there it's a lot about numbers. So a friend to many of us, Emily Templewood, who is graduating from med school this month, is very diligently on the graphs associated with every day updating the numbers across so many articles on Wikipedia. And if we do this on English Wikipedia, or we do it on Wikidata, so that if it's on Wikidata, it's going to then be transcluded across all other language Wikipedias. Actually, that's been quite an issue in how to make that happen. I don't know if anyone else is participating in that work who's on this call. No, not you, Andrew or Richard.
No.
Okay. So yeah, mostly it's geography articles. So COVID-19 in California, for example, that's not the exact name, but and then a lot of articles are impact of.
Right.
I will say, if people are interested, the symposium on Wikipedia and COVID-19, which our New York chapter hosted this past weekend, had a nice discussion of some of these medical topics and also some of the non-medical topics, and particularly user and other believer Jason Moore spoke about some of the geographical and non-medical topics.
Right. Great. So Rosie, thanks for that. The interesting thing about when we look at the biographies of men and women, right? We saw that overall we're still in the 18% of the biographies about women.
Exactly.
And then as you get more towards contemporary era, when you're talking about COVID victims, so that means if someone's born past 1900, pretty safe bet, right? That means that it starts to get better, right? It's not 18%, but it's getting closer to maybe 30%, 40% of the bios are about women. What do the numbers look like when you get to people who are alive today, or the set of folks who are alive today?
So I can give you some numbers.
Because I know that if you talk about people born in the last 15, 20 years, it starts to get close to 50-50, but that's very biased with pop culture icons and things like that, right?
So I did a review of all COVID-19 death by COVID-19 for countries, starting with alphabetically with Argentina through France.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 108 articles that I've reviewed so far. Of those 108 articles, 91 were men, 17 were women.
Ooh, that's not good.
35 of the 108 articles have a COVID-19 talk page template. The others don't. And then interestingly enough, 2 of the articles have a COVID-19 stub template at the bottom of a stub article, and the others don't. I wish I could say there's a correlation between the ones who have the templates and that these articles are somehow people who played some major role in their country in regards to COVID-19, beyond the fact that they died of the disease. But that factoid isn't true.
Right.
It's absolutely random. I just believe that the only way we can actually analyze this data and be able to do these comparisons of, does it have a biography template and a COVID-19 template? And if yes, give me the list.
Mm-hmm.
We can analyze it. It's only if we go ahead and put that talk page template on all those talk pages, which is some amount of work, but not a lot of work. I just need other people to voice their opinions too, because, you know, you could disagree, and I'd welcome that opinion too.
Right, right. Rob, you had a comment about the fashion?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say I am always impressed with all the work that you do, and I just get tired of hearing about it all. I don't know how you keep up with it, but this great article that you created, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the fashion industry. I think that's one thing that I like to stress with new editors is that fashion is something that they can write about. It's a very popular topic, but it's very undercovered on Wikipedia, probably because of the gender gap and any number of other factors. But it is a way for new editors to write about something that they have some firsthand knowledge about.
I would like to point out there is no article on the impact of the COVID-19 on the internet.
There's no article about
They could also write about that too.
19 on beverages, and I thought about starting that. Probably will do so this week, like alcohol, coffee, tea. Things like Corona beer is taking a dive. Think about all the coffee shops and that are now shuttered except for drive-throughs, and the increased amount of coffee that people perhaps are buying and just making coffee at home, things like that. So lots of articles still need to be created.
Yeah, and fashion is a very very ripe area to expand, and where we have serious undercoverage for a long time. We've had some work with the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York and with the Met Museum, and there are a lot of really basic fashion articles that are underdeveloped. And if anyone has a little bit of fashion knowledge and you happen to be tuning in, that's an excellent chance if you want to write about caftans or different types of scarves or any sort of basic fashion topics.
Here's a fun fact. That I was the person who started the Wikipedia article on Manolo Blahnik. And so that fact tells me that there's a huge gap in fashion knowledge amongst Wikipedia editors if I had to do it. Because I don't know anything about shoes.
Because when I see Rob, I think Manolo Blahnik.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just see my shoes. They're fabulous.
Not think about but I know someone just created the article on N95 quite recently. The N95.
Yeah, speaking of fashion and fashion accessories, the N95.
And there's been no article about that, and now there is.
Good. We need it.
We do need it.
I'm realizing that these the articles about COVID-19 in this location or that location, each of those is naturally going to become a part of the history of that place. They smoothly change from journalism to history as COVID-19 in France becomes part of the history of France.
Yes.
It's a big event everywhere.
Yeah.
And
it affects so many people everywhere. It changes the history.
In our own way, we are becoming part of history, because if we are creating the articles that document what's happening, then we're part of that too.
This is my head exploding.
Yeah.
So meta.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, this is really the first truly global event in the Wikipedia era, right? You can talk about 9/11 and things like that, you could kind of say it affected this little vertical, but this is truly global, right? And it's kind of interesting to see that in general, I haven't seen much deletion debates about any of these. Like, pretty much people are accepting all this as our shared experience, which is pretty cool to see in general.
Yeah, and once these articles, there's so many in English Wikipedia and fewer in other languages, although, there's certainly a lot of coverage in other language Wikipedias, but once there is the translation work is done across languages, it's going to be, well, just nothing short of marvelous.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, thank you for that. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about what you've been working on with librarians.
Well, first I want to talk about, I'm really excited about my Wikidata room. I decided to do some redecorating.
Can you show us your Wikidata room?
Yeah, and well, no, it's still a bit of a mess right now. But
well, what happens in a Wikidata room? Let's ask you that.
Well, basically, I set up a laptop in there so I could use because I'm on my main computer now. 8 hours a day for work plus, the rest of the time when I'm not eating. And so I really can't use it to do a lot of automated stuff. So I set up the Wikidata room to put a laptop in there and a chair. Maybe a nice cushion on it. I don't know. And
cushions are important.
I set it up to make automated edits. But one thing that I am particularly annoyed about is there's a mass creation of items for academics with ORCID IDs, which is great. We're creating a giant web of interconnected knowledge, but the items are very there's no information in them. And they interfere with, and tell me if I'm getting too far into the weeds here, but it really interferes with disambiguation when you're trying to find the right Wikidata item with the right specific person when there's 10 people with that same name and you have no way to distinguish them because these items are blank. So I've been filling in the descriptions on all these Wikidata items. And I think I'm about at number 2 million so far. The latest batch has been going on for about a weekend.
So this is like a second laptop you have just chugging along day and night.
Yeah. And I made sure I set it so it doesn't go to sleep.
Right.
And interfere with the edits. And then it's just been churning away, putting in descriptions for these ORCID.
Nice.
Items.
And it's using quick statements, is that right?
Openrefine.
Oh, so you're letting Openrefine do the edits directly to Wikidata.
Exactly.
Oh, neat.
Wow.
Yeah, it just really annoys me. It's disambiguation work is so hard. Like linking a person to a Wikidata item. It sounds easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But which John Smith is it? That's when it gets really tricky. And having all this clutter in there just makes the work really harder.
How do you make that decision, Rob? How do you deal with the disambiguation?
Well, the disambiguation has to be done manually. You basically have to just go in and look, or you try to match dates, dates of death, dates of birth, other facts, occupations, that kind of thing. And so, but you can never automate it 100%. And sometimes you just have to physically go in and look. And that's what I'm trying to help with is this.
As we get
by adding descriptions, normally when you go in and you try to disambiguate, you're just presented with no information. There's just a name, you have nothing to work with, and it just makes your job harder. And this description at least is a small piece of information for somebody trying to disambiguate stuff.
Right.
And makes their job just a little bit easier.
Very cool. So
Very
this
cool.
is Wikidata. For those folks who are not aware of it, this is the structured database that we have that is in our projects. And this is what a Wikidata entry looks like. And what Rob is talking about is when you import a lot of these records, all you have is this label and then maybe some stuff down here. But this is not useful to people because there might be 5 or 6 Miguels, right? So by putting in this description that says this person's a researcher with his ORCID ID, at least you have some way to uniquely identify this person. Right?
And it doesn't really tell you anything about this person, but at least it tells you whether or not it's the kind of the person you're looking for.
Right.
Because if you're looking for a Miguel Meca who was like an Aztec leader or something in the 19th century, then you'll know that's not this person.
Neat.
This is very useful.
Thank you.
So that's pretty neat. So this is just chugging along.
Yeah, the latest batch has been going on for about 5 days now.
Wow.
Wow.
And so you're doing 10 edits a minute? No, more than that.
30 or so, but still, when you have millions of these, it takes a while.
So that's interesting. So it hasn't throttled you. By working through Openrefine, you can do it pretty fast.
Yeah, and it goes slow, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
It goes relatively slow, but I mean, if there's a pause or a lag, it really doesn't matter because it's just by itself in the Wikidata room.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't care.
Does it run through the night while you're sleeping?
Oh, it's been running constantly for 5 days right now. Yeah.
Awesome.
What's the furnishing like in the Wiki data room?
It's got a chair. It's not like a comfortable office chair like this one, just a utilitarian chair.
Nice.
But I've got a cushion on it in case I want to spend some time in there. But usually, all I have to do is pop in there and look at the screen and see the Openrefine update and see what's going on. Make sure, this is just a lag. It hasn't crashed. Everything's fine, and then I just go back out.
Very cool. So Openrefine is a piece of software that usually helps you do kind of these utility functions of matching something in one database against Wikidata or automating a lot of tasks. So you don't even need to know how to program to do amazing stuff.
No, and I assure you, I do not know how to program. So if I can use Openrefine, you can too.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in doing any sort of work with any sort of large data set in Wikidata, then Openrefine is an essential tool.
Cool. And is this the same as the work that you're doing for the librarians, or is it the different?
Oh, no, the librarians is actually, I wanted to talk, because we usually go on these WALRUS calls or these podcasts to talk about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to highlight a project that someone else is doing that's been a bit of an inspiration to me.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, is a friend of mine named Violet Fox, who's also a librarian, is that she has been, for the last couple of years, has just been quietly writing articles about African-American librarians. And right now there's 84 biographies in this category now. And she hasn't written them all, but she has substantially, increased the numbers quite substantially over the last several years. And her personal goal is to get it up to 100.
Wow.
And so I say, let's all help her out with that if we can. I've been writing a Wikipedia article today, which is the first Wikipedia article I've written in about 6 months, sad to say, and she inspired me to get started on that, and she's been out there on social media trying to get other librarians to join. So look her up. It's Violet B. Fox on Twitter, and hopefully she won't be mad at me for mentioning this online. But yeah, and like I said, it's a small scale, project of the type that Rosie does. And I've been really impressed with the work that she's done over the last couple of years. And I just thought that we should highlight something that's less flashy. It's like, oh, look, I did 2 million things, or I did this big thing that won, 1 million people saw on the front page of Wikipedia. Now it's just somebody quietly doing important work without a lot of fanfare.
Right. That's great. I'll definitely take a look at that and try working on those. That sounds great. Great. Benjamin, tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Well, it's a lot of the same. These days I've been doing mostly stuff with OTRS, which is, just for those who might not know already, that's the Open Ticket Response System, which, again, another unhelpful name, but it's just our system for, when people don't really know how to do the whole Wikipedia editing thing, but there's an article about them, and there's something really wrong, or they think is wrong with it, and they just want an email address they can write in to talk to someone, that goes to us. So, we've actually had a lot of new volunteers lately. Just, I don't know how much of it is because of the COVID stuff, but we've really actually been getting our backlogs down in terms of clearing out a lot of the old tickets. Just there were really hard cases, but we're finally getting through to work on them. So, plug for us. We're always looking for more volunteers, especially for other languages.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it up, because this is a side of things that the public really doesn't see, and they don't realize that when you email Wikipedia, it actually goes into a system called OTRS, and volunteers pick up a ticket and they hopefully handle it in a consistent way, right?
Yep. I mean, a lot of the stuff that comes in is the same sort of thing. Like, a very large portion of it is actually just people who are range blocked, and either they want to edit or they don't actually care, but they got the block notice and they're upset and offended that, I'm blocked from Wikipedia. Oh, what's happening? So a lot of that is just we have templates to sort of explain how that works. But there's also a lot of sort of very careful and detailed work when someone is complaining about stuff that's on their biography, and we have to go in and look and see whether there's stuff that really needs to be removed or whether it can sort of be referred to the talk page for that sort of thing. So yeah, a lot of different things you get to.
What's the most exciting email you ever got from OTRS?
Well, I'm not allowed to say.
Feel free to anonymize it slightly.
Hard to say.
See, that was a test. And you passed.
Yeah. Oh, you are now past. You can now get mage level 2. You'll get one of these hats.
But
I'm really impressed with. I just want to say, I was an OTRS volunteer for a very short time, and it requires a degree of patience and temperament that I do not possess, and that's why I went inactive. So kudos to all the volunteers who do this work. It's basically Wikipedia's call center,
right,
with all the negative aspects of that you could imagine.
Yeah, we should do that in the promotions. You can join Wikipedia's call center. Have you always wanted to?
Yeah. I mean, editing Wikipedia is often a thankless task. This is the most thankless of all the thankless tasks, right here.
Well, I will say it is sometimes rewarding because, well, half the time people who write in are very mean and we help them anyway, but you're getting sort of nothing in return. But and I would say half the time people are actually very nice and very thankful, and just very thankful to be in touch with someone because they sort of saw Wikipedia as this faceless thing and didn't quite understand that there are people behind it. And so just to be able to hear from someone means a lot to them, and they're very grateful for that. So,
and the fact that you don't have video today is totally coincidence. You're in fact not faceless.
that is
protection
correct.
program for OTRS volunteers.
You're not in hiding.
Thank you for doing it. Do you have to consult other people to get most of the issues handled, or is it clear what to do and you can just do it?
I would say in most cases, it's pretty straightforward. There are, a good portion that does come in where it requires more care and sort of looking carefully. We have an internal mailing list. We have an IRC channel where people sort of flag things up for review. It can be tough when there are when it's really an editing dispute that's going on in an article, in terms of how to kind of go in there and make sure there isn't defamatory material, but at the same time kind of respect the wiki editing process and let the community sort of do its work the way it does.
Now, do you know if any of these stats are active? Because we're seeing the annual reports were stopped 6
yeah,
years
we have.
ago. I see there's a daily chart. Is this accurate or not?
I
It seems
believe it
like
might be. Is it generated from? I can't see what the URL is, but
it seems accurate because it's up to May. So it looks like there's 100 tickets in the queue at any one time, and
yeah. So in terms of the reporting, I don't think we've really been doing the annual reports in a while. But yeah, I mean, from that you can see that there's sort of some of those 100 tickets are new ones coming in and out. Some are kind of the ones that have been sitting around for months, or just because it's difficult. No one's quite able to close them yet.
right.
So who would you say is a typical OTRS member? If somebody in our audience is listening now and thinking, well, I don't know whether this is something for me, kind of who's a typical OTRS person?
Okay. Well, I mean, it depends a little because OTRS is actually sort of split into queues, we call them. There's Info EN, which is sort of for English Wikipedia, so that's probably the most active one. But then there's one for file submissions for Commons. Actually, we do some sort of validation with just permissions for when people want to submit pictures, and it's not clear that they have the rights. We can try to validate that for the Commons community. And then each of the several different language projects have their own. Some of the sister projects, stewards. So in terms of like an English Wikipedia one, I would say we usually don't take people who are sort of brand new. Like usually we want you to have been around for a little while. I've made a decent number of edits. You have to be 16. I guess that's, I think, our hard requirement on that. But so yeah, I would say a lot of them are people who've been around for a decade or more. But we also have had a bunch of new users who are only been on Wikipedia for a few years. And it's it's really great to get the new people in and kind of have their new perspective on how to cut through some of the thornier things that have been piling up.
Has anyone tried using AI to reply to emails?
If they have, they haven't told us about it, and we would not be too happy if we found out. I mean, in terms
Is that
of
why we can't see your picture, because you're actually an AI?
Yeah.
I guess I can't really disprove that at this stage. So.
Well, thanks for describing it. It's really interesting that most people never know about it, but it serves a real crucial role in the movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks to you and all the volunteers that do this important work.
These are the tough cases. As Rob said, I also volunteered for a few weeks, and I said, "Yikes!" and couldn't hack it. So you're the few of the crowd.
The part that crosses my experience the most is images, is permissions for images. So people often, they upload an image to Commons, and they have to prove that they actually are releasing it, and they have to say the correct language and the magic words. And
I hate those tickets, actually. Like, I sort of avoid, because I don't like, we have sort of a whole song and dance of, well, you have to give us the right language of how you're releasing it on the license. And then we have to say, are you actually the photographer? Because a lot of the times people are, well, of course, my friend took this picture for me. It's mine, right?
What? How could you say that? What you ruined everything.
So yeah, but we do that process. It's not my favorite part.
Yeah, there must be an easier way.
It's where the paperwork happens.
We should brainstorm that.
Sometimes people are, of course, my friend took this picture for me. It's mine,
well,
right?
Thanks so much for that. We're going to talk a little bit about conferences. So I think one of the things that we just finished this past weekend was the Wikimedia Hackathon, which was supposed to be in person in Albania, but because of COVID-19, it was canceled, and the community was left to, well, I wouldn't say left to, but we're free to create an alternative event, and that's basically what happened. And it's pretty neat. So I'll show you what the page looks like for the hackathon here. So this image here was only created just yesterday, or maybe even this morning, of the attendees there. So there's more than that number, but those are the folks who showed up for the group picture or the individual group pictures there. But it's pretty neat what happened. Basically, it was all online, and we used Telegram as the coordinating point. And then people set up their own either training sessions or huddle sessions throughout the day. On this podcast, we actually had an episode the day before it started just to kind of give people some orientation. So we kind of served as maybe a video intro to the whole thing. So as we said before, Telegram, IRC, those are now bridged, which is pretty cool. So if IRC has this contingent within our community, especially the technology folks, but IRCs are kind of primitive, and you can't really scroll back to read all the old messages depending on the channel. So you actually do have this system that bridges the Telegram group to IRC, and messages are sent back and forth. So you can kind of use old style or new style community And then we actually have a Fabricator workboard. So if you've never seen Fabricator before, it's kind of like a workboard where you can track things that people are working on, which is kind of cool. So people can go in there and make a new task or react to other people's work there. So these are the types of projects that were worked on during the hackathon. And then if you scroll down here, we had not just a bunch of technical sessions and training sessions. Sorry, it gets down a little further here. But we actually had a bunch of social things too. So we actually had a dog walk and desert ramble. So people went out with their mobile phones, and I walked my dog, and someone else walked through the desert, and kind of shared our outdoor views, which was kind of cool. But we also did training on things like Sparkle and Wikidata and ORS, right? The system that helps rank articles with AI and machine learning. And then we also had some social events like Untapped. So we had like a happy hour, a women's tea time, and then editing tabular data. We also had a piano concert. And then we had the symposium with Richard's Richard helped with Wikimedia NYC. Tell us a little bit about that and how it went, Richard.
Yeah, so it was a pretty great event. We had so we were thinking about maybe having some sort of a smaller conference in the recent past, and of course we weren't able to hold conferences anymore, because of the situation in the world. So particularly relevant to New York City because we're sort of a global epicenter at this point, or have become so. We had a symposium on Wikipedia and COVID-19. We had 4 invited speakers from around the world, fairly, at least from a couple continents, and people talking about. So Netta Hussein talked about some of the medical aspects and the translation aspects. Jason Moore talked about some of the non-medical aspects. Lane Raspberry talked about Wikidata, and Thais Mrada talked about some of the government relationships involved with some of this work. And so it was 2 hours long on a Saturday evening. There were about 300 or so people who watched live, at least. And there have been at least 1,000 people who have watched it since on our on Facebook and on YouTube. And hopefully we can do some more things like this in the future. And we're thinking about it as a chapter, but it's something we definitely want to invest in strategically, because this is a unique time, and we have to find new things, new ways of expressing. Doing an online version of exactly what we did before is perhaps not going to work. And we think that this might be a new way to reach some new people and help grow the community and build some solidarity between now and when hopefully this crisis is over.
Very cool. Thank you. And it's kind of interesting that, Saturday night, you've got a captive audience in many ways, that most people aren't going anywhere. So
yeah, Saturday night has been canceled everywhere in the world.
Other things. So it was a 2-day event. We actually had a lot of cool things. The second day, we actually do have in our Wikimedia movement, we have a new video conferencing server that's running Jitsi, which is one of the more popular open source video conferencing systems. So that is actually something that works quite well. We had like 20 people in the room that worked quite well. We could probably go up to 50 quite safely. So anyone in the Wikimedia movement who's interested in using that room, get in touch with Richard, myself, or other folks. We do have a Telegram group called CROW, Conference Remote Options for Wikimedians, and you can get in touch with us there to find out how to get onto that server. But we want a lot of different folks to use it.
Yeah, thanks, Amir Sarabdani, for setting up the server, Jitsi.
Yes, this is all volunteers. So this is still kind of in testing mode. And then we also had some folks go on and play a board game. So if you've ever played the game Ricochet Robot, and of course there's a Wikipedia article about it and telling you how to play the game, you can actually play this on text interface. You can actually go onto Discord or just Telegram, any chat, and people can play this game collectively, which is kind of cool to see that. But I think the real interesting innovation was the showcase of projects. So what we had was maybe about 15 to 20 people who at the end of the 2-day hackathon want to show something that they've done or to demo things. And we used a new system called Remo, REMO.co. It's a commercial service, but I thought it was kind of neat in that if you've ever been to a hackathon, we actually have this big ballroom and people sit at different tables and they present stuff. And that's kind of what the software does. It simulates a big ballroom like that. So you actually have people at different tables, and you can actually float to different tables. And each table had a different theme, like Wikidata or Lua modules or depict statements and structured data in Commons. And you can actually wander to different tables and you have a mini video conference with people at that table, which is kind of slick. And then what happens is you can kind of tell everyone, all right, stop what you're doing. We're going to have everyone look on stage and present your stuff, which is basically what we did for the showcase. So we had about 17 folks go up there and talk about their project, whether it was I did this video server project or I found a new way to edit tables in Wikimedia Commons. And that was pretty neat. So it was very short lightning talks for each one. But then when you're done with your session or with all the sessions, instead of having Q&A take up everyone's time, we had each of the speakers go to their table. So if you're speaker 1, you went to table 1. If you're speaker 4, you went to table 4. And after all the talks were over, people could just go to the table where they're interested in talking to the speaker. And it actually worked out really well. So you can see that we have different clusters of people at different tables, depending on if they wanted to talk to the speaker about that topic. So there really is no other tool quite like this. It's remote, remo.co. And we were just experimenting with it. And that was one of the more interesting things about the hackathon is we wanted to just try different things. Dog walks, board games, talks in Jitsi, talks in Google Meet, remote.co. So I think we have some pretty good experiences that might inform how we do future conferences.
I have to say just really quickly, this software looks amazing. It's like an online conference simulator.
Yeah, it's like SimCity.
I think it's like a Zelda dungeon.
Yeah, I know. I expect like click here, you can get a simulated continental breakfast.
I love like couches on the side. You can, instead of sitting at a table, you can just go sit on a couch, and there's a table and a bunch of armchairs.
Yep.
We should have Lucas's piano should be on this map.
Ooh, yeah. People can go in the performance room and play piano.
Yeah, and there'd be like a dance hall on the side. Yeah, it's all.
Yeah, I love this. This is something we need to think about for some future kinds of events, like if we do a remote Wiki conference North America, something like that.
Yeah, I was not convinced this is the right way to go because I was always skeptical of like reproducing a physical environment in virtual space. Like, are you just doing it because you're lazy? Like you don't have any other paradigm? But it actually worked out pretty well, right, Richard? You were there.
Yeah, it looks like you kind of gamify a conference almost.
Yeah, I like this. It's like it's. I mean, I like the Mozilla Hubs thing, but it's too 3D. It's like too much. It's like too much. Too much.
Right.
I think I was thinking of like a 2D, more like an 8-bit aesthetic, and this is a little bit closer to that. And I think maybe we should think about if we can. You know, it's still like a closed commercial platform. I think we could probably think about if there's a way to hack Jitsi so it works a little bit more like this.
Right.
That might be a very productive solution.
Right.
It makes a kind of virtual space, a virtual reality in a way where the conference is held.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's as Richard said, this is nice because it's just very low fidelity and just let me get to the room. I don't need super 3D goggles to get me to the room. Just get me to some space to talk.
Yeah. I like how you can go between rooms, which, you know, the Zoom feature of rooms isn't, at least to my experience, it's not so easy to go between rooms.
Right.
On Zoom, you lose something.
Correct.
This looks like you could just hop from table to table if you wanted to and chat for just 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and move on.
That's right. That's right. It was really neat to see that. And then the thing you're not seeing here is that actually after you get to the table, anyone can screen share. So you can actually say, "Oh, Rosie, show me what you're working on," and then Rob can say, "But let me show you what I'm working on." And then on top of that, you can do a shared whiteboard.
Ooh, wow. So
you can actually use this for brainstorming. So you had 6 people in there. You can actually have a whiteboard of stickies and all that stuff, which is kind of neat. Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting option even for like Wiki Conference North America, or maybe even like Wikimania in some way, you know, to have either networking, speed networking, or just brainstorming around things. There is a limit though. There's only 6 people allowed per table, and that's a hard limit. I don't know why it's a hard limit, but for now it's 6 per. But it had its uses, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you one possibility there because it's one of a number of what they call virtual summit packages that are out there. And the more experience we get, the more things we can do, I think. All right. Any other takeaways, Richard, from the hackathon?
I thought it was it went. I think people were surprised by how well it went. I think the organizers and the participants were both expressed pleasant surprise that it went fairly well. It probably wasn't quite as productive as a regular hackathon, but people had a good experience, and there were a surprising number of actual results. So you can see there were like 20 or so people presented in the showcase who had actual results from the hackathon, and I think it will probably, when there will be a Wikimania and the Wiki Conference North America in the coming months in a virtual sense, that will largely build on this experience and the experience of like the symposium that the New York chapter did, and some other experiments that have been happening throughout the movement.
Yeah, good point. And you can actually go into the Etherpad that was for the final presentations and see some of the stuff that people worked on, which is just really cool to see that so many folks, probably not as international as we would like, still European and North American heavy. Some folks from India were quite involved, but it was great to see more things.
It was on Berlin time, so
right.
we not everyone woke up at 4 a.m. or in the US, but we caught the latter end of it.
Not like we got a lot to do on Saturday night, so
that's true.
Great. And any other experiences with online conferences for you folks? I mean, there's a lot of them happening, and the more we can figure out from these types of events that paradigms at work or software systems at work would be nice to find out. All right. If there's nothing else from folks, any last things to demo or to talk about? What are we expecting to happen? We're going to have the Wikimedia Summit sometime soon. Rosie, is that right?
Sometime soon. The date hasn't been actually announced yet, but we're hopeful in the next, maybe this week, let's just say, that we're going to learn what the date is for that. Probably a weekend, maybe in May.
Right.
Maybe.
And even something like that, we're not even sure what the format's going to be, right? The idea is to try to have something that brings groups together to discuss parts of the strategy and for us to sign off on it. But I guess that's something that's complicating things. And I have complete sympathy as to how do you run something even close to the in real life Wikimedia Summit in a virtual space. So maybe that's what they're struggling with.
Yeah, it's going to be different, but I think I'm so excited by the possibilities. Looking forward to seeing a lot of folks that we're not going to see in person, but at least we're going to be able to see them on whatever platform the organizers end up using.
I really hope that they could find some way to emulate, like capture some of the in-person experiences in virtual forum, like the candy table, or the guys that go around and yell at you for not being in a particular program at a particular time, or the bong. Yeah. So, because I really feel like without those things, it's not a Wikimedia Summit.
Right, and there better be cake.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's something that made the hackathon fun, was that if it was just tutorials and hacking, it just would lose something. So I'm glad they embraced the whole, let's do a dog walk, let's have a concert, let's play a board game. Yeah. So more of that, I hope, because otherwise looking at strategy for 2 days straight online is going to be really dry. So I think.
Well, the only thing worse than that is doing it in person.
Oh, that would be.
I think it's going to be an exciting time for everybody who attends. So let's just let's wait and see.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Welcome for the first time, both Benjamin and Peter. I'm so glad you could join us. Yes. And we also, welcome you with any other ideas coming back to our show and showing us those things. But we're always interested in more voices from the community. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All
Pleasure.
right.
Thanks everyone who listened.
All right, let me bring up the last bits of slides here. We are going to close out.
Thank you to our 2 listeners. We appreciate you sticking with us.
We cherish you dearly, both of you.
Yes. We normally pick a time that's better for Europeans and Asia, but this is not a great time for the European crowd. But thanks again. And remember to subscribe on YouTube, like this video, and to share the video to other folks. And get in touch with us with other show ideas. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, everyone.